All right, so I thought I'd put out a list of my favorite planes. They're not in any particular order. I can't say that I have an absolute favorite aircraft because a lot of them are so different. You know, there's EDFs and there's tractor motor gliders like this one, and pusher gliders and park jets and bush planes, and so, you know, I like to fly all those different types of planes. I would, if I had to choose a category of plane that I like to fly the most, I would probably have to say park jets are probably my favorite thing to fly because of the amount of power, the aerobatic nature of them. You get, you know, and I'm talking about pusher motor park jets because as opposed to EDFs, because they have more power than EDF jets. They're just as maneuverable and aerobatic as EDF jets, but they have more power and they get more flight time. So they don't sound as cool, but they sure fly awesome. All right, so no particular order. These are the planes that if something happened to them, I would want to replace them, either with that particular plane or something just as good. All right, so in the very first fixed wing that I ever purchased and ever flew is also one of my favorites. And that is the Zeta wing, the Z84. It's 845 millimeter wingspan flying wing with the stock power system. It has excellent power. It doesn't have unlimited vertical, but it has excellent power. The nature of a wing, you know, if you get one that handles really well, like the Z84, it has light wing loading. It can carry a lot of weight. It cuts through the air, you know, has very little drag. It's one of the few wings that I've flown that when you're going into a tight corner, it doesn't skid out on you, you know, holds its line very well. You get a lot of flight time with it. And of course, like any wing, it's extremely maneuverable and aerobatic. That has been one of my favorite aircraft of all time, is the Z84 wing. You know, if something happened to that one, I would want to replace it with either the same airframe or something comparable to it. But it's a fairly inexpensive. They still sell the plug-and-fly version of it. They also sell a kit version of it. My preference anymore, if I have the option for a kit or a plug-and-fly or a ready-to-fly, I would choose the kit, just because with most factory planes, I have not been happy with the power system that they put in them. That vast majority of the time, I'm not completely happy with the power system that they put in them. So if I have the option, I would rather get a kit and put my own electronics in it. Then I know that I'm going to get the performance out of it that I'm looking for. Okay, so the Zeta Z84 wing is one. I will have links to all these aircraft in the show notes. These are all my absolute favorite aircraft out of all the ones that I've flown over the years, and I have flown a lot of aircraft. So you can't go wrong with any one of these aircraft. The Eachine F16 50 millimeter EDF jet comes in a plug and fly. It also comes as a kit. Now I have the kit and I have the plug and fly EDF. The kit I converted into a pusher motor. And I think I'm going to be a lot happier with it than the EDF version of it, just because, like I said, it has more power. It's just as maneuverable, it's just as fast, if not faster, and I get a lot longer flight times out of it. But it's a lot more work, you know, putting together a kit. But as far as the EDF jets that I've flown so far, there have been 4 of them so far. The Eachine F16 50 millimeter EDF jet is my favorite of the EDF jets that I've flown so far. It's got good power, it's very stable, very maneuverable, and it's a very forgiving. And I don't have a gyro in it, I just have a standard receiver in it. And like I said, I've only flown 4 EDF jets so far. And the Eachine F16 is just an awesome flying EDF jet. The Fun Cub 1100, that was a kit. They still sell the kit. They're a lot more expensive now than they were when I purchased it. It has 1100 millimeter wingspan. It has, the way I have mine set up, it has tons of power. It's very aerobatic. It does not like to fly fast. It is a slow flying bush plane. But it's fantastic. I mean, it has great slow flight capability, even without flaps in it. I don't have any flaps in mine yet. I'm going to be putting flaps in it. But even without flaps, it has great slow flight capability. It's another plane that's pretty aerobatic for a bush plane. It has tons of power with the power system that I put on it. It has extremely good flight time, great slow flight capability, and it's very stable and very forgiving. And I like that in an aircraft, you know, where the stalls are just a non-issue with it, you know, no tip stalls, anything like that you have to worry about. Fantastic flying plane. The Eachine and ATOMRC G1500, and it comes in two different configurations. You can fly it as a 1.5 meter wingspan, which I think is the way I prefer to fly it, or you can fly it as a 1.1 meter wingspan. Makes it a little bit faster, makes the wing loading a little bit heavier, makes it a little more aerobatic as far as the roll axis. But I prefer to fly it in a 1.5 meter configuration because I also like having that really good slow flight capability on that plane. But it's another plane. That one flies on 4S LiPo. It has plenty of power. And those type of airframes, the glider, pylon pusher type planes, those are well-proven airframes. So it's very stable, it's very forgiving. It's kind of like that bush plane, you know. It doesn't have any bad tendencies. It has really good slow flight capability. That one you could fly quite a bit faster than the bush plane. So I love that type of airframe with those pusher pylon motors on those glider type airplanes. Very little drag, very long flight times, plenty of power, good slow flight capability. But that one is it says plug and fly, but it is actually a plug and fly kit. So don't be fooled by that. You have to solder some of the electronics together. You know, the connectors are not already on the ESC. You know, you got to provide your own receiver. You've got to assemble quite a bit of the airframe. So it is not a plug and fly plane. It comes with everything that a plug and fly plane would come with, but it is definitely a kit, just so you know that. The Aero's Viper 50mm EDF Jet comes as a plug and fly. There's no gyro that comes with that one either. I just have a standard receiver in it. It is like the Eachine F16. Those are my two favorite EDF jets of the four that I've flown so far. The other two EDF jets are not even close to being in the same category as the Aero's Viper and the Eachine F16. Both of those airframes are easy to hand launch. They have adequate power. You can do aerobatics with them. It's very stable. It's very forgiving, just like the Eachine F16. As a matter of fact, I put them side by side and tried to decide which of the two was my absolute favorite, and I had a hard time doing that. With all the criteria that I set forward and judged each one of those on each one of the criteria that I set forward on the EDF jet, it really came down to which look did I prefer. And I prefer the look of the military aircraft over the sport aircraft. And that was the only thing that pushed the Eachine F16 over the top as far as my favorite EDF jet. So the Viper is another. If you're looking to transition into an EDF jet, you're going to have an easy time of it with either one of those two. Either the Eachine F16 50mm EDF jet or the Viper 50mm EDF jet. And I do love the size of the 50mm EDF jets. They're easy to fly, they're easy to hand launch, they're easy to land, and both of them are pretty durable. The F16 is a little more durable than the Viper, but both of them are just exceptional flying aircraft, you know, plus the fact that they're EDF. So I would recommend either one of those to you if you were looking to transition into EDF jets. All right, the next plane on the list, and I've had this one forever and a day, and it is the Volantex Ranger G2. It's a 1.2 meter wingspan pylon pusher motor glider. And it's another one of those, proven airframe. Unless I do something really silly, that type of airframe is going to fly really, really well. So it was probably the first, probably the first aircraft of that size that I had ever flown. Now, when I received mine, it had a terrible thrust angle on the motor. It really pushed the nose down. When you launched it, it really pushed the nose down if you went heavy on the throttle abruptly. Now, so I had to make a thrust angle adjustment on mine to get it to where it held its line, didn't push the nose down anymore, didn't push the nose up, held its line whenever I throttled up with it or when I launched it. From what I understand, a lot of people posted after that and stated that Volantex had fixed that bad thrust angle. So that should not be an issue anymore. If they did, I don't know what prop they're putting on that plane now. When I received mine, I think they put, I think it may have been a 7x4 or 7x5 prop that they put on that. Because with the thrust angle they put on there, you didn't have enough space to put a bigger prop on it. After I made the thrust angle adjustment on mine, I had plenty of space for an 8-inch prop. So I fly it now with an 8x4 composite prop, which provides it with a lot more power. That is another aircraft that you can put a large enough lipo in it that you have plenty of power. You also get a lot of flight time with it, and that's another aircraft that it's fairly aerobatic for the type of plane that it is. It's very stable and it's very forgiving, and the stalls on it are a non-issue as well. And it has exceptional slow flight capability as well. So that's another keeper for me. The Volantex P-51D Mustang, the 750 millimeter Volantex plane, that comes as a plug-and fly. They also sell it as a ready-to-fly, but I purchased a plug-and-fly. Now, I made a lot of modification to that aircraft to get it flying with enough power and enough flight time that I was happy with it. The aircraft stock handled really, really well. There was no problem. It's an exceptional airframe. It was very stable, very aerobatic, very forgiving, but the stock power system that they put on that, it pulls a lot of amps for a tiny 2S LiPo, which is, it's set up for a 2S system. You can't put a very large 2S LiPo in it, so you're not getting very much flight time at all with it, even though with the 2S power system it had sufficient power to do aerobatics with. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the amount of flight time. It was like flying an EDF jet, very, very little flight time. So I won't go into all the details here, but I think just changing out the prop with a two blade prop, using a 3S with a 12 amp ESC, replacing the stock 10 amp ESC with a 12 amp ESC, I think yours will fly just as well as mine. If you watch any of the flight videos of that 750 millimeter P-51 Mustang, it's an exceptional flying little Mustang, and on the 3S with a 2-blade prop, it has tons of power, much more power than it had on the 2S system with the 4-blade prop. And I get a lot of flight time with it. So I've gone over all that information. If you watch a couple of the last videos I did, I posted of that aircraft. There's one that states this is how you can get this flying perfectly. So if you watch that video, all the details will be in there for you. The Eachine Flying Fish, it's the only one I have on the table with me. This is one of my latest favorite aircraft that I have flown. And I'm happy to report that I didn't have to do anything to this plane other than modify the linkage for the rudder. I wanted a little more rudder movement on this plane, so I moved the linkage on the servo arm one hole up from where it was stock. and I had to add landing gear because of where I land. But if you have a grassy area to land on, you won't need landing gear. It doesn't come with the landing gear. I had to fabricate those. And I added 17 grams of weight with that landing gear to this aircraft, and it still has unlimited vertical. And this just operates on a 3S LiPo with two 1105, I think they're 5,000 kV motors with 3-blade 3016 props. Another exceptional flying plane, and if something happened to this one, I would want to replace it. It's a blast to fly. Stable, forgiving, good slow flight capability for the type of plane that it is. Exceptional amount of power, very aerobatic, just a blast to fly. So that's definitely on my list. The Aero's Pioneer 620 millimeter wingspan bush plane comes as a ready to fly. But you can also bind up OpenTX transmitter to it. So that's not a problem. It does come with the gyro system, and with the OpenTX transmitter you can put it in full manual mode. So it's another exceptional flying aircraft. It's a 620 millimeter wingspan, like I stated. Flies like a much larger plane. That's the way this one is. It and the Pioneer fly like much larger planes. It's just a joy to fly. The only downside to the Pioneer, my only complaint, is that it has a very lethargic roll rate. So I'm in the process, I'm in the process of modifying that stock configuration for the ailerons to give it the type of roll rate that I want out of it. Once I get that completed, it'll be a near perfect plane for me. Most people, I don't think, will be all that concerned about a faster roll rate because it's a bush plane, it's a cruiser, but it is fairly aerobatic. You can fly it in a very small area. It's extremely forgiving. It has no drama stalls, very good slow flight capability. It's just one of those planes where they hit almost everything right, you know. And I don't have a lot of factory planes where they hit almost everything right. The ones that they hit almost everything right on are the ones that I have on this list. So you won't go wrong with any of these aircraft that I have on the list. The Eachine Micro Skyhunter is one of my favorite planes. Unfortunately, Eachine does not make that aircraft anymore. Now, it didn't have a tremendous amount of power, but it had adequate power and very good flight time for doing very large loops. It could do very good vertical climb for stalls, finesse maneuvers, any type of aerobatic that you wanted to perform with it without a rudder. It's a bank and yank plane. But Sonicmodell has produced almost identical size airframe. It comes as a kit, and it's made out of EPP foam instead of EPO foam, so it should be more durable. It's a 787 millimeter wingspan, so I think it's about 20 millimeters larger wingspan than what the Eachine Micro Skyhunter has. So it should have the same flight capability, and it should be just as stable as the Eachine Micro Skyhunter, and that's another aircraft that if something happened to it, I would be getting one of the Sonicmodell Skyhunter kits to put my own electronics in. But just a fantastic airframe, you know. That was an airframe that was just very well designed, very stable, very aerobatic, and very forgiving. You can't beat it, you know. The Conscendo Evolution 1.5 meter wingspan sport glider. The sport gliders, I mean, if you look at them, they all look pretty much the same. Some of them are larger, some of them are smaller, some of them have larger wingspans, some of them have shorter wingspans, but it's a proven airframe. And every one of the sport gliders that I've flown so far, and I think there's been 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, I think, so far, they have all turned out to be exceptional flying aircraft. It's a proven airframe, you know. And so the Conscendo Evolution, the only weak spot on it is the plastic spinner and prop. It's fine for 3S, but you can also fly it with a 4S. And if you're going to fly it with a 4S, I highly suggest that you replace that plastic assembly with a metal alloy assembly, because that's a lot of RPM on 4S LiPo. And the area underneath the canopy, there's not a lot of foam there. That is the weak spot of the fuselage. You really need to put in some carbon reinforcement in that area. So as long as you do those two things, you'll be good to go with that aircraft. And it is an exceptional flying sport glider, and I just have an absolute blast with it. As soon as I have better weather, I'm going to be taking the sport gliders back out again. It's been a while since I've flown one. All right, last but not least is another sport glider, and that is the Volantex Phoenix V2, which has a 2-meter wingspan. And it is another fantastic flying sport glider, and it's still, I looked at the price on it the other day for the plug and fly. It's still, I think at Hobby King, it's still $137.99 for the plug and fly version of that plane. I mean, that is one of the aircraft I think is one of the best values that you can get. And I'll go over these planes again and let you know what I think are the absolute best values that you can get on all these aircraft based on how they fly and how much they are. But the Volantex Phoenix 2, I mean, it is an awesome flying. I was really hesitant to buy it because it has an ABS plastic fuselage. But that turned out to be absolutely fantastic. You know why? Because the ABS plastic fuselage, I didn't have to reinforce it anywhere. That aircraft was ready to go. Now it's a 2-meter wingspan plane, so it does not have the best roll rate. You know, that's one thing that sport gliders aren't really known for, is a really great roll rate. But it has plenty of power, and so I put flaps on it, and I set up the flaps so that they work like full span ailerons. So that 2-meter glider now will roll almost as quickly as my 1.5 meter glider does, and it has full flaps on it now, so you can fly it extremely slowly. Those aircraft, those sport gliders, are so high performance. I was surprised at how much power they have with just a stock power system, and how aerobatic they are, and the amount of flight time that you get with them. They're just, it's only been in the past, I think, 6 months to a year that I flew my very first sport glider, and I can tell you that now I will always have at least one high performance sport glider in my inventory. They're that fun to fly. They almost fly themselves. I mean, they're extremely stable, very forgiving, almost impossible to stall. So I absolutely love them. The only downside to those are, it's a pain to transport them out where I fly in the middle of the desert, and then having to assemble the wings and everything once I get out there. That's the only downside. But you're going to have that. You're going to have that same issue with any large plane that you have to transport somewhere to go fly. That's just the nature of the beast. But absolutely awesome. Okay, so the best value I think of all these aircraft. You know, some of them are better values than others. The Zeta Z84 wing plug and fly version, last time I checked, and you know how much everything has gone up in price, right? Okay, so last time I checked, the plug and fly version was $100.99. That's a steal, I think, for that wing. Let's see here. The Fun Cub 1100, the cost of that kit is almost double what I paid when I purchased it for that kit. But the way that aircraft flies, the size of the aircraft, the way that aircraft flies, putting budget components in it. Right now it's at $113.99. I'll bet you for $175 you could have that outfitted the way I have mine outfitted. And that is an exceptional flying aircraft. So for $175 for a plug and fly build of that aircraft for what you get, I don't think is a bad price. I think it's still pretty good value. and you might be able to find the kit. Who knows, you might be able to find it cheaper. You might find a coupon code to be able to get it, if you can, get the kit for even less. Okay, the Arrows Viper. The Arrows Viper, last time I checked, was still $139.99. I think that is, looking at its competition out there, and looking at how well that aircraft flies, I would say that that is a very good price on the Arrows Viper. The Volantex P-51D Mustang, the 750 millimeter plug and fly. Last time I checked, and this is within the past couple of days, was $137.99. I think for what you get with that aircraft, with the minor modifications that you're going to have to make, I think you're going to be hard pressed to find a warbird of that size that flies that well, with the amount of power that you're going to have on that aircraft and the amount of flight time you're going to get. For, with the prop, the additional prop, and a 12 amp ESC to purchase for it, you're probably looking at something around 150 bucks. Well, I think you're going to be hard pressed to find an aircraft that's going to give you all that, especially a warbird of that size. It's going to give you all of that for that price. That's just my opinion. I think that's a very good price for that. This Eachine Flying Fish, last time I checked, which was just a couple of days ago, in the US warehouse, they still had the plug and fly version of this for $105.99. Now you think about how much those little 400 millimeter wingspan brush motor and prop aircraft cost with the little toy transmitter, and you can get this as a plug and fly for $105.99. I don't think that's a hard decision. I think that the Z84 wing, and I think the Flying Fish, and the Volantex Phoenix version 2, and the Zeta Z84 wing, I think those are probably the most exceptional values that I have on this list as far as what you get for what you paid for it. And most of the other ones are a good price. I think that Eachine is pricing themselves out with the F16. The price has gone up and up and up and up. And so the Viper is a much better value than it right now. The Volantex Ranger, $155.99 for that size and that type of aircraft. I think that's a really good price as well. But those four that I listed, I think, are the most exceptional values that I have on this list. No work involved, except a little bit of work for the P-51D Mustang if you're looking for a warbird. And who doesn't want at least one mini warbird in their inventory, right? So the other two aircraft that if something happened to them, I would rebuild them, are my GFS Park Jets, my F-22 Micro, my F-22 Mini. I know I'm biased, but for any of you who have watched any of those flight videos, you know that I'm not exaggerating when I say those two airframes are exceptional airframes. They fly like much larger aircraft, and with the power systems that I have on them, they both have unlimited vertical. They all have exceptional slow flight capability. They both have exceptional stability, stall characteristics, and are extremely forgiving. You can't beat that. When you get all those features into one aircraft, you just can't beat that. So, and I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, okay, well, where is the Volantex Sport Cup 500 on the list? Where is the Eachine Mini P-51D? Well, the Volantex Sport Cup 500 is still the one that I recommend the most as your very first aircraft. If you're going to be flying your very first RC aircraft, you've never flown a RC helicopter, you've never flown an RC multi-rotor like a quadcopter, and the fixed wing is going to be the very first thing you've ever flown, I still recommend the Volantex Sport Cup 500 more than any other aircraft as your first aircraft. If you've flown something else, I would recommend the Aero's Pioneer. But those are brushed motor and gearbox planes. Brushed motor and gearbox planes are pretty much disposable planes. If something happened to my Volantex Sport Cup 500, I wouldn't replace it. You know, when you've got aircraft like this, you've got some experience, and you've got aircraft like this that you could buy in a plug-and-fly version, probably for less than you could buy the Volantex Sport Cup 500. Why would you buy the Volantex Sport Cup 500? You know, that's not a hard decision for me. Same thing with the Eachine Mini Mustang. It's great flying little brush motor and gearbox plane, but both of those fly like micros. They don't fly like bigger planes. And the power systems are going to have to be replaced over time, you know, as opposed to a brushless power system. And it takes a lot of work to replace those. So brush motor and gearbox planes will never be on my keeper list. That's why they're not on there. But anyway, that's my list. Links to all those are in the show notes. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air.